The grand hallway of Windsor Castle was silent, except for the echo of 2 sharp footsteps. Queen Camilla stood at the far end, her expression hard as stone. In front of her, Captain James Harlow of the Queen's Guard shifted uncomfortably in his crimson uniform. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, but the warmth didn't reach this conversation. "I need to know where your loyalty lies, Captain," Camilla said, her voice low and deliberate. James felt his throat tighten. This wasn't a casual question. This was a test. Behind him, 3 other officers stood at attention, their faces blank, but their ears listening to every word. The Queen Consort had called this private meeting without warning. No advisors. No witnesses from the household. Just her and the men who guarded the royal family. "Your Majesty, my loyalty is to the crown," James replied carefully. Camilla's eyes narrowed. "That's a diplomatic answer, Captain. But I didn't ask about the crown. I asked about me." Before you continue, if you love powerful royal stories like this, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss what happens next. James felt sweat gather at his collar despite the cool air. He had served the royal household for 12 years. He had protected kings and queens, princes and princesses. He knew how to stay neutral, how to remain invisible while doing his duty, but now something had shifted inside the palace walls, and Camilla wanted him to pick a side. "I serve all members of the royal family with equal dedication," he said. "Even when those members undermine me?" Camilla's voice turned sharp as glass. James knew exactly who she meant. Princess Catherine, Kate. The Princess of Wales had always been beloved by the staff, by the guards, by nearly everyone who worked in the palace. She remembered names. She asked about families. She smiled not because cameras were watching, but because she genuinely cared. And lately, whispers had been circulating that Camilla resented that warmth. Resented how effortlessly Kate commanded respect while Camilla had to demand it. "I have never witnessed the Princess of Wales undermine anyone." "Your Majesty," James said quietly. The air in the hallway seemed to freeze. Camilla took a step closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something dangerous. "Be very careful, Captain," she whispered. "The guards who stand beside me will rise. Those who don't." She let the sentence hang in the air like a blade. James said nothing. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained composed. He had been trained for physical threats, for protesters and intruders. But this was different. This was politics. This was power. And he was standing in the middle of a war he hadn't signed up for. Camilla turned away, her silk dress sweeping across the floor. "You're dismissed," she said without looking back. "For now?" James saluted and walked out of the hallway, his mind racing. As he stepped into the courtyard, he saw her, Princess Kate, walking with her children near the garden. She glanced up and gave him a small, kind smile. Just a fleeting moment of recognition. Nothing more, but in that moment, James realized something that made his stomach drop. He had already chosen his side, and Camilla knew it. That evening, James sat in the guardhouse with his second in command, Lieutenant Sarah Drummond. The room was small and dimly lit, filled with the smell of coffee and old leather. Sarah poured 2 cups and slid one across the table. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. James rubbed his face with both hands. "Worse, I've seen the future, and it's not pretty." Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying him. She was sharp, observant, and loyal. If anyone could be trusted, it was her. James told her everything. The meeting, the threat, the choice Camilla had forced him to make without actually asking the question aloud. "She's trying to consolidate power," Sarah said quietly. "She wants people afraid to cross her. And if we don't fall in line, then we're the enemy." Sarah sipped her coffee, her eyes distant. "I've heard rumors, James. Other staff members have been reassigned. A butler who worked for Kate was suddenly transferred to Scotland. A lady-in-waiting who spoke too fondly of the princess was let go for budget reasons." She made air quotes with her fingers. "Camilla is cleaning house." James felt a chill run through him. This wasn't just about hurt feelings or jealousy. This was strategic, calculated. Camilla was building an inner circle of people who owed her everything, and anyone who showed even the slightest preference for Kate was being pushed out. "What do we do?" James asked. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "We do our job. We protect the family. All of them. But we watch our backs." James nodded, but his mind was already spinning. How could he protect everyone when the two most powerful women in the palace were at war with each other? The next morning, James was assigned to Princess Kate's security detail. It wasn't unusual. Rotations happened all the time, but the timing felt deliberate. He arrived at Kensington Palace just as Kate was preparing to leave for a charity event. She emerged from the residence wearing a navy dress, her expression warm but focused. "Good morning, Captain Harlow," she said, her voice bright. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness." As they walked to the car, Kate glanced at him. "Is everything all right? You seem tense." James hesitated. He wasn't supposed to share palace politics with the royals. It wasn't his place, but something in Kate's eyes told him she already knew. She wasn't asking out of curiosity. She was asking because she cared. "Just a long week, ma'am," he said carefully. Kate stopped walking. She turned to face him fully, her expression serious. "Captain, if something is happening that affects you or the team, I want to know. I can't help if I'm kept in the dark." Here was the difference. Camilla demanded loyalty. Kate earned it. Pressure, he admitted. On the staff? On the guards? To choose sides? Kate's face didn't change, but her eyes flickered with understanding. "I see." She didn't ask who was applying the pressure. She didn't need to. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "And Captain, you and your team will always have my support, no matter what." James nodded, his throat thick. As they continued to the car, he realized something. This wasn't just a palace war. This was a battle for the soul of the monarchy itself. And the outcome would determine what kind of institution the royal family would become. 3 days later, the tension exploded into the open. A senior palace aide named Margaret Finch was abruptly dismissed. No explanation. No farewell. Just a terse statement that she was pursuing other opportunities. But everyone knew the truth. Margaret had been Kate's closest advisor for 7 years. She had organized events, managed schedules, and fiercely protected the princess's reputation, and now she was gone. The staff whispered in hallways and private corners. Fear spread like smoke through the palace. If someone as established as Margaret could be removed overnight, no one was safe. James watched it all unfold with growing unease. He saw the way people avoided eye contact with Kate now, afraid that even speaking to her might mark them as disloyal to Camilla. One afternoon, James was summoned to Clarence's house, Camilla's residence. His heart sank. He walked through the familiar corridors, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he entered the drawing room, Camilla was seated by the window, a cup of tea balanced delicately in her hand.
"Where to sit?"
"Captain," she said. Gesturing to the chair across from her, James sat, his back straight, his hands resting on his knees. "I've been reviewing the guard assignments," Camilla began, her tone casual. "And I've noticed you've spent considerable time with the Princess of Wales recently." "Standard rotation, Your Majesty." "Standard." Damala repeated the word as if tasting it. "Tell me, Captain, do you find the princess... ... easy to work with?" James knew this was a trap. Every word he said would be weighed and measured. "The princess is professional and considerate," he said carefully. "Considerate." Camilla smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, she has a talent for making people feel special. For making them believe she truly cares." Implication was clear. Camilla thought it was all an act. A performance. James said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Camilla set down her teacup with a soft click. "Captain Harlow, I'm going to be direct. I need people around me I can trust. People who understand that the monarchy's future depends on unity, not division, not competing loyalties." "I understand, Your Majesty. Do you?" Camilla leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I'm sitting, Seems some members of the guard have forgotten who actually holds authority in this household. James met her gaze. With respect, Your Majesty, the guard serves the institution, not individuals. Camilla's expression hardened. The institution is built on hierarchy, Captain, and I am Queen Consort. That means something. James felt the weight of those words. She was right, technically. But the reality was more complicated. Camilla had married into the family. Kate had been groomed for decades to be future queen. The public adored Kate. The staff respected her. And Camilla, despite her title, was still fighting for legitimacy. I will always fulfill my duty, Your Majesty, James said. Good. Camilla stood, signaling the meeting was over. Because I would hate to see a distinguished career end prematurely over a misplaced sense of loyalty. James stood and bowed his head. As he left Clarence's house, his hands were shaking. The message had been delivered. Align with Camilla or face consequences. That night, James called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. 6 men and women gathered in the guardhouse, their faces grim. Sarah Drummond stood by the door, arms crossed. We need to talk, James said. Because what's happening isn't just politics anymore. It's personal, and it's dangerous. The officers exchanged glances. Everyone in the room had felt the shift. The palace had always been a place of protocol and tradition, but now it felt suffocating. Like walls were closing in. She threatened you, Sarah said bluntly. James nodded. Not directly, but the message was clear. Fall in line or lose everything. A younger officer named Thomas spoke up. So what do? We can't just abandon the princess. She's done nothing wrong. That's exactly the problem. Another officer, Elena added. She doesn't have to do anything wrong. Just existing as a threat to Camilla's authority is enough. James rubbed his temples. We took an oath to protect the royal family. All of them. But how do we do that when they're at war with each other? The room fell silent. This was the impossible question. The one no one had an answer to. We stand with Kate, Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Not because we're taking sides, but because she represents what the monarchy should be. Kindness, service, humility. If we let Camilla bully us into abandoning those values, we've already lost. She could have us all removed, Thomas said. Maybe, Sarah replied. But can she remove all of us? Can she fire the entire Queen's Guard without raising questions? Without the press finding out? Without people asking why? Suddenly, every officer loyal to Kate is gone. James felt a spark of hope. Sarah was right. Camilla's power had limits. If the entire guard stood together, if they refused to be intimidated, she couldn't touch them. Not without exposing the war happening inside the palace. We protect the princess, James said slowly. We do our jobs with honor, and we don't let fear dictate our actions. One by one, the officers nodded. It was decided. But James knew this was only the beginning. Camilla wouldn't back down, and the battle was about to get much worse. The next week, King Charles returned from an overseas trip. His presence brought a temporary calm, a sense of order. But James knew the king was caught in the middle. Charles loved Camilla. She was his wife, his partner, but Kate was his daughter-in-law, the future of the monarchy. He couldn't afford to lose either of them. During a formal reception at Buckingham Palace, James stood guard near the main hall. He watched as Camilla and Kate entered from opposite sides of the room. The tension was palpable. Guests noticed. Cameras noticed. The two women smiled for photos, standing side by side, but their body language told the real story. Kate's posture was open and relaxed. Camilla's was rigid, controlled. At one point, Camilla leaned close to Kate and whispered something. James couldn't hear the words, but he saw Kate's face. For just a second, her smile faltered. Then she recovered, nodding gracefully and moving away. James's jaw tightened. Whatever Camilla had said, it wasn't kind. After the reception, James was walking through the palace corridors when he heard raised voices. He stopped, recognizing one of them immediately. It was Prince William. James moved closer to the partly open door. not to eavesdrop, but to ensure the prince's safety. Through the gap, he could see William standing in front of his father, King Charles. "You have to do something, father," William said, his voice strained. "She's making life unbearable for Catherine. For the staff? For everyone?" "William, please," Charles replied wearily. "Camilla is under tremendous pressure. The public still hasn't fully accepted her. She's trying to establish herself by tearing down my wife." William's voice rose. "By threatening the people who work for us? This isn't about establishing authority. This is about insecurity." James heard the pain in William's words. This wasn't just a royal dispute. This was family being ripped apart. Charles sighed deeply. "What do you want me to do? She's my wife. Catherine is your daughter-in-law. The future queen? The mother of your grandchildren?" William's voice cracked slightly. "You can't let this continue." There was a long silence. James held his breath, waiting. "I'll speak with her," Charles said finally. "But William, you have to understand the position I'm in." "I do understand," William replied quietly. "But I also understand that if you don't act, this family will fracture beyond repair." James stepped back before he could hear more. His heart ached. This was bigger than him. Bigger than the guard. This was about the future of the monarchy itself. And it was falling apart. The following day, James received an unexpected message. Princess Kate wanted to see him privately. He arrived at Kensington Palace, his mind racing with possibilities. Kate greeted him in a small sitting room, sunlight streaming through the windows. She looked tired but composed. "Captain, I need to ask you something," she began. "And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course, ma'am." "The guard. The staff. I know there's been pressure. I know people are afraid." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I need to know if staying here, if continuing to fight this battle is putting good people at risk." James felt his chest constrict. "Your Royal Highness, with respect, you're not the one putting people at risk." "But I'm the reason for it," Kate said softly. "If I stepped back, if I kept a lower profile, no." James's voice was firm. "Forgive me, ma'am, but that's exactly what she wants. For you to retreat, to become invisible, to let her define what the monarchy becomes." Kate's eyes filled with unshed tears. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to be at war with anyone." "You're not at war, ma'am. You're just being yourself. And that's enough to make some people feel threatened." Kate looked at him for a long moment. "Thank you, Captain, for your honesty and for your loyalty." "You've always had it," James said simply. As he left Kensington Palace, James felt a renewed sense of purpose. Kate wasn't going to back down, and neither was he. But the final confrontation was coming. James could feel it. 2 days later, Camilla called a meeting with the senior household staff. James was included, along with Sarah and several other key officers. They gathered in a conference room at Clarence House, the atmosphere thick with tension. Camilla stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. "I want to address the rumors," she began. "There have been whispers of division, of competing loyalties. I'm here to make something very clear." She looked directly at James. "This household operates on respect and hierarchy. Anyone who cannot accept that is free to leave." James felt every eye in the room turn toward him. This was it. The moment Camilla would force him to choose publicly. "Your Majesty," James said, standing. "With all due respect, the Guard has always operated on principles of honor, duty, and service. We serve the Crown, and the Crown includes every member of the royal family, even those who undermine unity." Camilla's voice was ice. "The Princess of Wales has never undermined anything," Sarah interjected. Standing beside James, "She has served this institution with grace and dedication." Other officers began to stand, one by one, a silent show of solidarity. Camilla's face flushed with anger. "You're making a mistake." "No, Your Majesty," James said quietly. "We're doing our duty." The room erupted. Some staff members gasped. Others stared in shock. Camilla's hands trembled with rage, but she maintained her composure. She looked at each officer standing in defiance, memorizing faces. Very well, she said coldly. You've made your choice. Don't expect mercy when consequences come. The meeting ended abruptly. As the officers filed out, James felt both exhilarated and terrified. They had drawn a line. But what would happen next? The answer came within hours. Camilla went directly to King Charles. She demanded action. She framed the guards' defiance as insubordination, as a threat to royal authority. Charles, caught between his wife and his duty, called for a private meeting with James. James stood in the king's study, the weight of history pressing down on him. Charles looked older than usual, tired and conflicted. Captain Harlow, Charles began. I've heard what happened. I've heard many things lately. Your Majesty, I can explain. Charles held up a hand. I don't need explanations. I need solutions. He paused, studying James. Oh, tell me honestly. Is my wife being unreasonable? James hesitated. This was the king, but it was also a father asking about his family. Your Majesty, the Queen Consort is trying to establish her authority, but her methods are creating division rather than unity. The staff, the guards, we all want to serve the crown, but we can't do that if we're forced to choose between members of the family. Charles nodded slowly. And Catherine? How does she fit into this? The Princess of Wales has done nothing but her duty, sir. She's kind to the staff. She respects the institution. And the people love her for it. James took a breath, but that love makes some people uncomfortable. Charles closed his eyes. Camilla feels like she's being compared, judged, like she'll never be enough. Perhaps, James said carefully, but the solution isn't to tear down the princess. It's to build up the queen consort through her own actions. Charles looked at James with something like gratitude. You're a wise man, Captain. Wiser than most of my advisors? I just want to protect the family, Your Majesty. All of you. Charles stood and walked to the window, looking out over the palace grounds. I will speak with Camilla. I will make it clear that this division must end. But, Captain, I need you to do something for me. Anything, sir? Protect Catherine. Not just physically, but from the politics. From the cruelty. She doesn't deserve this. Charles's voice broke slightly. None of them do. You have my word, Your Majesty. As James left the king's study, he felt a shift. Charles had made his choice. He would support Kate, not because he loved Camilla any less, but because he understood what was at stake. That evening, Charles had a long private conversation with Camilla. No one knows exactly what was said, but the next day, Margaret Finch was quietly reinstated. The hostile atmosphere began to ease. Camilla didn't apologize, but she stopped making demands. She stopped issuing threats. The palace war didn't end with a dramatic battle. It ended with a quiet understanding. Camilla would have her role, her title, her place in history, but Kate would not be diminished, would not be pushed aside, would not be made to feel less than. James continued his service, as did Sarah and the other officers who had stood up. They had risked everything for what they believed was right. And in the end, they had protected not just a princess, but the integrity of the institution itself. Months later, James stood guard at a state event. Kate passed by and gave him that same small, kind smile she always did. But this time, there was something else in her eyes. Gratitude, recognition, respect. Camilla was there too, performing her duties with practiced grace. She didn't smile at James, but she didn't glare either. An uneasy peace had settled over the palace. James realized something profound in that moment. Loyalty isn't just about following orders. It's about standing for principles even when it's dangerous, even when it costs something. The guards hadn't chosen Kate over Camilla. They had chosen kindness over cruelty, unity over division, service over fear, and in doing so, they had saved the monarchy from itself. The palace would always have its politics, its power struggles, its human flaws. But as long as people like James stood guard, there was hope. Hope that the institution could be more than titles and tradition. Hope that it could be a force for good. As the evening light faded over Windsor Castle, James took his position at his post. The war was over, but the work of protecting what mattered most would never end. And he was ready.